So today I'm going to be working on the next part of my brake upgrade for the Miata. Now the first part of this is to put in some stainless lines for the rear brakes. I've got this set up from SuperMiata / 949 Racing. I'm going to be doing this starting with the driver's side because it's a little bit simpler. The Miata has a junction block on the passenger side rear. That's what you see here is this little block. It's going to replace the old one. It's connected to a stainless line. So that's for the passenger side, and then for the driver's side you just have a standard brake line. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, and what I'm going to do is pretty simple, right? There's a banjo bolt style connection here that I have to undo, and then on that side there's your standard like 10mm flare fitting connection. I found a very simple way of going about that last time, which is I hit it with a micro torch and then I hit it with PV blaster to cool it off, and that usually loosens it enough that it comes right out without a problem. I do have to figure out what size wrench I need on the opposite side of that, so I'm going to figure that out right now, and then I'll show you how that's done. After I finish that, I'm going to go over to the front of the car and do this proportioning valve from Wilwood. Also from SuperMiata / 949 Racing. They sell it along with the adapters that you're going to need in order to make it work. So we'll do that, and then that will be the setup that I'm going to run on the Miata. So let's go ahead and get that started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 17mm socket on my ratchet. Got that right here. I'm going to undo this banjo bolt so that I can undo the line. I've got this handy dandy used milk jug down here full of brake fluid. I'm going to take the line and just drop it into here and let it drip whatever it's going to drip off into there instead of onto my floor. Now that both rear brake lines are on, I'm going to go ahead and do the proportioning valve. Now, the Wilwood Proportioning Valve comes with some American standard fittings. The kit from 949, you can add the adapters that you're going to need in order to use the 10mm flare nut setup on the Miata. So you won't be using these that come in the kit, you'll be putting those in. You'll need an 11mm wrench to turn those. And then for the front lines, you're just going to connect them together using this adapter fitting that they include that uses a 13mm flat wrench. Now you'll notice that these fittings have a thread locker applied to the threads, which is why I have my Permatex thread locker here. This is good for hydraulic fluids and stuff, so it works with brake fluid, and it's going to go on both these small fittings when I put them in here in order to seal this up nice and tight. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first, and then we'll go ahead and install this on the car. So here we are with the factory proportioning valve of the Miata. These lines here are for the front brakes. I'm going to be tying these together. These lines here are for the rear brakes, and I'm going to be putting the proportioning valve in line with these. So the two-sided fitting that comes from 949 SuperMiata, so in here, it's literally going to be used to tie these two lines together, down, and this whole prop valve, factory one, goes out. It is held in place with this one screw. The Wilwood one will be held in place with the same one. So let's go ahead and take that off so that I can put the new components on. One thing to keep in mind is you're going to have leaking brake fluid. I could drain the reservoir to minimize how much is going to leak. I'm just really tired of draining that reservoir. So in my case, I'm just putting this cardboard and a rag down. I'll undo, all the lines, and whatever leaks will leak, and then I'll put it back together. I may regret that statement. The proportioning valve is now in. The only thing I really did off camera, and I highly recommend that you guys do this a little differently than I did. I marked right through here on the bracket back here so that I can drill a hole and put in a screw and a nut to hold this in place against that bracket. You don't want this free floating, right? Because over time this mass will vibrate, probably harm these lines. What I recommend you do is before you tighten these fittings down, you know, just kind of like thread them in as much as you can by hand, then position this to mark that, then remove the proportioning valve, drill your hole, and then after that install it. I ended up drilling through this hole, and that just makes it so much harder and takes a little bit extra time, and you know, you have to be very careful not to chew up the proportioning valve when you're doing it. So I just recommend that you make that small modification because it'll make your life a lot easier. And also, if you have a riv nut tool, I heavily recommend that instead of putting a nut on the back here, you just put in a riv nut. That way this is now, you know, it's got a nut, it's got a thread in the position that you need for the new prop valve. And if you ever got to remove it, it's as simple as just removing a bolt. You don't have to worry about catching the nut on the backside. So just small things that I would recommend that you do in order to make this better. At this point, with the proportioning valve in, everything connected, really all that's left to do is to bleed the brakes. So I'm going to start off in the rear. As per usual with the Miata, start off with the driver's side rear because the lines actually flow from the front to the passenger side rear and then to the driver's side rear. So technically the farthest as far as the travel of the line from the master cylinder is the driver's side rear. So that concludes the installation of the rear brake lines and the proportioning valve for the Miata. In the next episode, I'm going to go ahead and bleed all of this out and then go ahead and take the car for a test drive and start adjusting my proportioning valve so that I can set the balance that I want. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, feel free to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you're notified when I post up another video. If you have any questions, feedback, or comments, feel free to leave that in the comment section. And as always, thank you guys for watching.